And with that laugh, it can mean only one thing. It's 8 o'clock on a Friday morning, and it's time for a better way of life. We were sniggering because Trooper, the dog, if you've all been worried about him, probably not. But if you have been worried about him, he's and anyone that's been watching the post has recently had a spinal operation. They successfully removed the disc from his back, which was causing him the problem, and he's now recuperating. So he's in here in the office, stroke studio, and if you hear noises in the background, which sounds like a dog, it is indeed him. But
Not
what I was
like he normally does.
not barking, but what I was saying to Marianne, put my foot in it, obviously, just before we came on air, was that that's him enjoying himself. But what I meant by that was dogs sometimes stretch and they kind of go, and or like they rub their faces, etc. Nothing else was implied or sinister. So there we go. You've been on holiday of sorts, haven't you? Well, you've had a little trip.
I did, yeah.
How was that?
I was a wonder of LinkedIn, actually. Somebody I met on LinkedIn. Somebody who'd seen me and what I talk about. This was nearly 2 years ago, actually. Who thought at the time I did coaching for people that are neurodiverse, contacted me, and I said, well, actually, I don't. But actually, in the end, he got a friendship out of it, and they were really good friends. And he'd invited me. It was like on a work trip to Valencia, which I was slightly concerned about whether it was going to happen, given everything that we've heard. I think the media did quite a good job. Not that it wasn't bad. We didn't see anything in the centre, and it was up to 25 degrees yesterday. And I think some areas have been devastated, but they said it's really caused a problem because people have been cancelling, and the centre and the out of it haven't really been affected much at all.
There you go.
It has been very affected, but not like I said, in the centre where we were, nothing.
It
was really lovely, really lovely.
The photographs that you sent look absolutely fantastic. Reminded me a little bit of Venice to some extent, which is somewhere that I have been to.
It was interesting. I just find it really, really interesting just how wonderful it is when you meet people from LinkedIn that and actually, like I've met quite a lot of people through him, and he's a surveyor, so he said he's been doing it hundreds of years. I'm pretty sure he hasn't been doing it hundreds of years, but he knows a lot of people, and what's great is he will put my name around, which is true networking, really, isn't it? Because he also knows that I don't really like doing this, or he'll take me to things to meet people, which is really, really great. And that's like proper networking and being, and the same as you've taken me to things. So there's all sorts of ways, but doing it virtually like that isn't. I'm fine with going to things, but not necessarily on my own to things.
Yeah. Now I have to say though, I was slightly jealous. It kind of reminded me of when I was at school and of university. Really, I never really managed to get on any school trips that were particularly good. In one part of my work life, I did go on some lovely work trips to places like Hamlin, to the Christmas market, etc. But of late, it's mainly been sort of to a city for an event, like an exhibition or whatever. So nothing particularly as glorious.
Very lucky lady I was. Very
as
lucky.
Glorious as that. And I can remember one particular time when I was at university where our trip that year was to Preston. Nothing against anyone that comes from Preston. Wonderful place. We were meant to go as part of ethnicity and cultural diversity as a trip to, which is, I know, for anyone that's taken that course, brilliant. So we were meant to go as part of that to Preston to talk to people who were immigrants into the UK about how they felt about being immigrants. we didn't, because quite frankly, we felt that was probably inappropriate. But we had a lovely day out in Preston at the arcade anyway. There we go. And on that note, we're going to bring in our guest today, who's probably not going to comment on any of that, but we'll welcome him with open arms anyway. Mark.
Hello.
Nice to meet you. Did you ever go on any great school trips or university trips or
school trips? Ooh, going back, the usual Alton Towers and various other things. I think at the end of the year, usual ones. I think the one that stuck in my mind more than anything was Menai, where, believe it or not, of all the things, quite randomly, you had to do a craft group where we had to carve love spoons.
Wow.
Oh.
Fantastic.
So,
have you still got your love spoon that you crafted many years ago?
No, I've no idea where that's gone now, to be fair. That's good, going back way back then. But yeah, things like that. So it was quite, that's what stayed in my mind. I think it was one of those where we did all things outdoor, from sort of big caving, orienteering, having love spoons, various other things, bits like that. So it was all nature orientated. So it was really good.
So Mark, tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Okay. So my name is Mark. Been in training now for must be over 15, 16 years. Spent a long time in security. Covered things from being sales director. Training's been the main thing I've done. I've been fortunate. I heard you obviously previously about work trips. I'm quite fortunate. I've been to more recently Qatar, where I was working on the World Cup. Previous to that, I've been working in Dubai with the police.
Wow.
And in Kuwait, working with Kuwaiti oil and gas. So, the Middle East, I've spent quite a lot of time. Qatar was quite interesting. I think it gets a bit of a hard press, really. I think it depends on your expectations. And I don't think enough people, when they go abroad, research where they're going, and they sort of seem to think, well, I'm from the UK, therefore I can do X, Y, Z, not being sort of culturally aware of what's required, shall we say. And then you get somewhat of a shock, shall we say. I mean, I must admit, I was a bit surprised on a couple of things I learned. I think the big one got me was we was all in a room, and obviously we knew the usual way, what they call PDA, public display of affection, and various other things. We was all aware of that. But something I couldn't get my head around was, because we were working on the World Cup and there was, male and female about, was, and this was how it described to me. If a lady falls down the stairs, let her fall. But we are not allowed to touch females in any shape, form, or way.
Whoa.
It goes against everything that you probably
against everything.
Morally and work-wise.
Yeah, we looked at each other thinking, right, so if somebody falls or what have you, then we just let them fall. Because obviously it's the Middle East, and some people say, well, that's not quite right. That's exactly what was said in the classroom.
Yeah. Wow.
So things like that. I mean, they were, shall we say, they did make a lot of, shall we say, exceptions, because a lot of Westerns about. But there were, some people say it was strict. I would say it was strict. It was just a case of that it was controlled more. And it just makes you realise, whilst I was over there, I was fortunate enough to be involved heavily with the Poland national team. That's who I was working with. And I was responsible for the training ground and 80 plus security men staff do the rosters and looking after that. And I was very lucky. The team I had were very, very good. However, I don't follow football at all. So some of the, the key strike, I can't remember pronounce his name, Lewandowski, or I don't know what his name is. I had to escort him about, and everyone was surprised. You get his autograph? No. I had tickets for every conceivable game, and I didn't go to one. I've got friends who were crying and said, could you go to the England game? Yeah. Did you go? No. Brazil?
Wow.
Yeah. Netherlands? Yeah. Did you go to any game? No. I did a tour of the stadium when they were empty. That was good. That was about the level of my interest, really.
But actually, serious point aside there. When you go somewhere to work, you go somewhere to work. And it's something that a lot of people can't.
People assume I went out with them, so it worked in F1, and actually, so they didn't get to see, because the amount of hours they would work.
Yeah.
You know, at times they would get about an hour's sleep, because if there'd been a problem with the car, that would be it. So they really very rarely actually, and many of them weren't even interested in the race, only if they won, whether it was going to affect any bonus they got.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I mean, I you know, I'm not sort of saying anything good, bad, or indifferent, but my experience whilst I was over there in Qatar was very positive. They're trying to go down the tourist route. I mean, it's probably one of the most cleanest countries I've been to. And talk about sort of trust was phenomenal. To give you a couple of examples, you know, somebody left some money in reception that fell out of the pocket, a few notes, and it was left there all day. And nobody touched it. And it was there for about 4 hours. I walked past about 5 times. So in the end, I collected it, put it in an envelope, and then put it on one of the manager's desk. And a couple of days later, one of the groundsmen said, I know it's a long shot, Mark. He said, you know, you're in charge of security here. I've lost some money. No one's handed any money in. I said, how much and where was it? He said, oh, it's not a lot. It's probably equivalent to about £10, £15. He said, but I suppose I'm going to see it again. When did you have it last? So I was sat in reception. I went, yeah, it's an envelope. He went, you're joking? I went, no. I said, nobody steals. You know, simple as that. People would leave laptops lying about. I think the biggest surprise where it came to light about trust was, like everywhere in the world, there's McDonald's. And of an evening, I used to take a 40-minute walk to McDonald's, just taking, you know, the evening sun, grab a coffee and watch the world go by. And you'd see people leaving car keys, designer handbags, and just wandering off, just going shopping, and it just, nobody would bother.
Yeah.
It left there.
It sounds like it's very similar to Somerset in that respect, yeah.
Somebody with ADHD would be fairly good. I'd be quite good there, since I leave everything everywhere. So it
was great. I'll be honest with you. The level of trust was phenomenal. And you know, the other thing which was quite funny was one of the chaps I was working with, he bought a push bike while he was out there. So even though we had designated drivers, he'd cycle to work. Now I couldn't. The roads were just mad. You know, it was just a different world out there. I wouldn't drive, and I'm a confident driver. And he bought this bike, and he left it outside the hotel on quite a very busy area. And the bike was never chained up. It was left there for nearly 4 months. And every morning, his bike was still there when he came in the morning.
Imagine that.
Gracious.
Yeah.
So, Mark, have you delivered training out there as well?
I delivered training in Kuwait, and I delivered training in Dubai. But over in Qatar, I wasn't training. There was a bit of internal training, but I was sort of head of security for Poland and on the training ground. It was very, very different over there.
So when you've delivered training in places like that where they are very culturally different, have you had to go through all of your training material to, you know, make sure that it's culturally relevant, etc.?
No, I'll be honest with you. I was very fortuitous in as much as the fact that on 2 occasions I was recommended, which is always good. Marianne, I'll tell you, getting recommendations is always great. And the training materials were already done, and they were written in Arabic and in English, but they were told they had to liaise and answer the test papers in English because I had to mark the papers. So it was quite interesting.
Wow.
In that respect,
it's interesting. I had someone, I think he was from Siemens, and there was somebody from somewhere else that was on one of the AETs, and he was I'm going to say put together, erect, I don't know what you want to call it, the wind turbine things, normally out in the sea. Well, that was really interesting hearing how that's done. But they were actually then went over to Saudi, I think it was. So they were doing that in the desert. So yeah, he was going over there. So he'd come on my course and then was having to sort of learn, about how to do training, and then having to take into account, changing because of the time of day they start, because of the weather, having breaks, all that kind of thing. So a lot of stuff that people wouldn't even.
Yeah.
Mark, how much I rant about. How much I rant about training and about people doing it. Well, everybody knows, really. You'd have to be asleep if you didn't. But that people don't get it. I mean, well, it's not a what's the word? A secret about how you feel about training in the security sector.
Oh no.
And then I can let you go now with it. There you go.
Thank you for that. How long we got this session, Graham?
Well, long enough to get everyone in trouble. So yeah, go for it. Well, tell us what about training in the security sector. Is it bad at the moment? It's
horrific. Like in so many sectors, it is horrific. There are, like in any circle of environment, Marianne will tell yourself in her arena that she works in, it's very incestuous and people know people. And so you tend to find the same names crop up. But what's happened in the world of training security is over the years, I've been in a long time, and the courses have gone longer and longer and longer. It's gone more expensive than that. And so what's happening is wherever the shortcuts are there, people will take them. Now, to give you a couple of examples recently, and obviously for obvious reasons, I'm not going to mention names. I was doing some work with a client, and I left to work solely with this client, and they wanted me to do a telephone interview because obviously they knew the questions I needed to ask and I could see through it. They tried recruiting themselves and been burnt twice because they weren't following the qualification spec. An example of that was one was giving the answers out in class, holding up bits of paper while they're getting videoed, writing things down on a board, putting things in a WhatsApp group so they can complete their distance learning, all these kind of things. Now, obviously, the company I was working for are very, very good. And I'm their IQA for when I'm not teaching. And they asked me what we should do. And I said, declare it to the awarding body and get that course null and voided, which they did. So then obviously this person disappeared and then somebody else came on. But the interesting thing as well with both of these, when you freelance, certainly in security, you're expected to have all your own equipment, from PowerPoints to things like searching ones, two-way radios and various things. And people turn up with nothing. I'm like, how have you been teaching without the necessary equipment? And their answer to me was things like, well, they always provide it. And I've been around the block to know I've never been given any kit as a freelance. They pay a day rate and I have everything. So the final one on this was they were looking to replace my good self. So I interviewed this guy, and on his CV he said he'd been doing freelance training since 2018. So my opening gambit, he was in security, then he went into another field of work, then he went straight to training, which means he had a gap where it wasn't continuous and up-to-date knowledge. So he'd gone from having the experience to doing another role which is non-security related, but then he managed to become a trainer. Well, you need to have a few years relevant and up-to-date experience, which he didn't have. So there's the first alarm bell reading his CV. When I rang him, and I asked the question, so how long have you been teaching SIA courses? Now, bearing in mind, his CV said 2018. He replied to me, he said, since about 2021. I went, right, well, your CV says 2018, so is it 18 or 21? And he went, I went, right, okay. Next question then, we're moving on. Was it 18 or 21? I'm going to go over that. What equipment have you got? And again, he said, I have no equipment. I went, right, okay. Question, and he went, he came across and said, I can teach first aid as well. I said, we're asking first aid then. What's the ratio of mannequins to learners? And he went, one each. I went, no, that's not quite right, is it? Do I try again? And he went, yeah, it's definitely one each. I went, no, it's not. I said, the ratio is one mannequin for every 4 learners. I said, what about defibrillators, AEDs, the training one? He went, I'm guessing that'd be the same then, will it? I went, are you guessing? You should know, you're a tutor. And he went, right, okay. So going on from that, I said, look, you can imagine, I said, with regards to invoicing then, I said, have you got your own company? I said, because these go, a lot of the referrals and that come through a college and everything's auditable. So are you a member of the Information Commissioner's Office? And do you have your insurance? He went, what's that? I went, right, okay. Alarm bells going. I went, how do you invoice? And he said, well, I can set a company up if you like. I went, so you don't have a company then? And you've been training all this. I said, look, I'm going to put the phone down. I said, you're just a cowboy. So get on your horse. See you later. And that is quite shocking. That's not a one-off. That's quite common in the industry.
That will be what you
Wow.
Where do you see the problem? Because I mean, I was out teaching a company. It was a forklift company the other day, and they'd gone down the right route. In actual fact, I was recommended by somebody for the AET, by somebody they had in to do their first aid, and I taught them their AET, and they recommended me, which was all great. And Graham and I were talking about this earlier, and I know that I get called out on it, and I know that I'm told I'm a snob about the whole thing, but actually, to me, to actually engage in doing what you need to do, not a bare minimum or not just getting by, to me, having that AET says that you're engaging as well professionally in knowing that this is what I need to do. Because I never really understand why, if somebody's saying they're a trainer, why they don't have what they need. I say the word need loosely, to actually say that they are. I just don't really, I don't fully understand. And then what concerns me then is that I see it with the security sector, because I have taught quite a lot that have come through their AET. But I think I was saying to you about this the other day, that the issue you've then got is, but also the issue you've got down the AET route is that, again, as you say, it's been shortened and shortened and shortened because everybody wants to get through it quickly. Then the issue you've then got is that I would love to do it longer, but I wouldn't get any work if I did. So I have to sort of almost, I do my best with it and know that I can get through it. But then there's other people that will do their AET on e-learning.
Yeah.
They're learning how to teach from a computer. Then they are going to then potentially, like you say, then go and teach. So if somebody then teaches the SIA they've got their AET because they need that, you start thinking, where's the quality of anything going here? And it is like the Wild West at best out there, really.
The other thing as well, Marianne, is the other thing that's quite shocking as well is this. Even though I'm qualified to teach in lots of different areas, I stay in my lane. Now, the other problem you've got as well is you've got people, just because you've done the role as a security officer, door supervisor, close protection, does not necessarily mean you can stand up in front of people and give that information out. You know, it's just because you have the qualification, it doesn't mean anything. Now, I've got a sales background, so to be fair, that's probably helped me when it comes to delivering, be able to talk to different people. But what I'm finding is so many people have come into the industry, and when you just drill down and ask the right questions, they've got no depth. You're talking, whilst there's no disrespect to say someone's been a police officer. Well, being a police officer for 20 years is very, very different to being a door supervisor dealing with drunks. Because if you're dealing with drunk on the beat, you've got a van, you've got all the other big pieces of equipment, handcuffs, you can deal with it. I've done the doors to be able to teach the doors. I've done the doors now for 18 years, and I've just taken some time off. I don't even want to go back to it, but I've done the doors 18 years. I've got hundreds and thousands of hours, and I get to spend probably a good few days just telling stories, which adds credibility to, and also it brings the class alive, rather than just turn and say, well, when you're doing this, do this. Let me tell you a story about that happened to me. And it brings it to life. Anybody can read a PowerPoint.
Well, exactly. That's the bit about interesting. When I first started doing teaching the AT, I think it was Petals actually, when I first started, one of the managers where I was working said the feedback they gave me when I had a observation was that I used analogies and stories, and that wasn't really suggestible. And I thought, well, when he left, the class said, well, that's the stuff we like, because it's the stuff that people get, like you say. Otherwise, people might as well just read it from a book, or and I think that is where the difference comes, and it brings it alive, and people can ask those questions. What do you do if this, and how did you do that, and when this happened, how would you deal with it?
Yeah.
And I just think it's really, really sad now that when I say to people, I teach people how to teach, they go, what? They say, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, clues in the word, but because people don't think it's a thing. And I was on Matt Gutwell's podcast the other day talking about training and about how the whole neurodiversity sector, it's massively opened up now to people, every man and his dog offering training.
Yeah.
Someone gets diagnosed, or maybe not even, and then they go, I'm going to deliver a course on that. So there's no levels on that. They don't have a training qualification. So as you say, that's somebody potentially I'm doing some training tomorrow, and I've spent a long time, not just on the content, but actually making it so that it is not just some words and pictures on a PowerPoint. It's more than just that.
The other thing as well, Marianne, as well, and you'll say you agree with this as well, I'm sure. But again, CPD, so many tutors, trainers, teachers just do the bare minimum. I mean, I've picked up some courses, a lot being free, and things like unconscious bias and things I did quite recently, and various other bits and pieces. And it's about widening your knowledge base to make you a better tutor. And so, it's, how can I put it? I mean, to put it in perspective, I get Highfield ringing me saying, can I put your name forward? We can't recommend people, Mark, but we can certainly say they're in your area. So when you've got an awarding body putting your name forward, it's good. And even when you go further up the food chain from an IQA to an endpoint assessor saying the same thing, hi, Mark, I've been speaking to a client. Do you want to know if you're free to do some delivery for them? But the other shocking thing is, Marianne, is the rates of pay have significantly dropped, because what's happened now is the market is being flooded with people who claim to be tutors. And because they're getting established, they'll take anything they can. And because, like I just said earlier, the person hasn't got a company, hasn't got an accountant, so therefore they're just writing out an invoice and getting all that money in their personal bank account.
There's two sort of things. There's I'm going to get lynched for this probably, but there's the bigger companies who offer those courses that can put them out at not a huge amount, because they're paying freelancers not a huge amount. And don't get me wrong, I know they've got to pay for marketing and stuff, but it is really frustrating. Then you're probably the same as me, and I'm not going to lie here, it's really hard getting work because of the way that social media is now. It's really hard to get seen then. Even, and like you said, I went from, this is how amazing it can be, and if people can speak up, if you've had a good experience with a trainer, to spread the word. I literally got an email on a Thursday or Friday, I think it was, from a guy that said, you taught me 4 years ago, and I remembered him. He was a first aid trainer, and he said, I remember you were really, really good, you supported me afterwards. I didn't have to because I was freelancing. And he said, I've got some guys that want to do the AT. So I spoke to him on the Monday. He then said, I'll give you the guy's number. So I spoke to the guy on the Monday, and he said, is there any chance you can come the following week? And I said, yeah, I'm free then. Spoke to me for about half an hour, and he said, can I just say how amazing it's been speaking to you? You really know your stuff. You've been really helpful, blah, blah, blah. And then in the end, though, they said, could I come in Friday, Saturday, Sunday? So I did. So within a week, he booked me. He spoke to me. He said, gosh, I'm really, really, he was really happy. And they got a service they would not have got from a bigger business. They would not have got that service in all shapes, and I just wish companies would really do their homework a little bit more rather than just.
Can I just go through, actually, Marianne, with Mark, some of the things that we've kind of seen over the last 6 months, and see how many of these resonate with you. So one is, we've got training companies who are set up, who have a bank of trainers, and none of those trainers have any kind of training qualification at all.
Okay.
So
in the security sector, you've got to have the training qualification, because you can't get approved by the awarding body unless you've got a training qualification.
That in itself, and so that's where. Imagine if it didn't even have that. So that's one of the things we've seen.
Yeah.
Absolutely unbelievable. Secondly, the amount of training managers that we've seen in positions, even where people do have to have a training qualification, the training managers have no training qualification.
Okay, it's quite interesting to say that, because I've recently started a role as a training manager for a security company. And so, what they said was, when they were interviewing people, they were very surprised at the amount of applications, but they had no experience in security, but yet they thought they could be a training manager in security. I wouldn't dream of applying for a security manager role in a lot of areas, because I can't go and stay in my lane.
Well, yeah, but this is. I mean, I did a PGCE, but it was post-compulsory education and training. So, I've been there, so done it, got the T-shirt. Then when I decided to get out of education, because I kind of fell into it, having done training, and then thought, I don't, like many teachers, I don't know what I can do. I don't feel like I'm good enough to do anything. And then I thought, well, no, you've got a lot of experience in in the care sector or whatever. And then I looked around and I thought, well, I've got a higher training qualification. So I looked at loads of training, and I thought, well, I don't know the sector. Well, then I'm finding people are going for jobs as training managers. They don't know the sector, and they haven't got a training qualification. And I'm there thinking, and they're getting paid more, many of them, than I did as a teacher. And I'm like, what's that all about then?
And what you hear is from people when they're talking about it is, but they'd been in the sector for a long while. They were very good at whatever it was that they did within the sector, and they kind of just got promoted into that role, So I get it all of the time that people are choosing experience and likability, and maybe that somebody shows they know what they know, but there seems to be this big push and move away from, but they actually know something about training.
Well, yeah, and if you were, and like you said, Mark, so security, you have to have the AT. If you're doing NEBOSH, IOSH, so there's many sectors that you do have to have it, but the ones that don't, I sit there sometimes and I think, surely, okay, I'm not saying that those trainers wouldn't be good, and I'm not saying they're not engaging and stuff, but I wrote a course that I got accredited because I knew that there was many trainers. So there's many that haven't got anything. There's many who get their AET, but let's be fair, for many the AET doesn't really do a lot, because it doesn't. It depends who it's been delivered by as well. And if you're then going to get promoted into a training manager role, or you're going to set up your own company, or you did it a long time ago, and let's be fair as well, legislation's changed, equality and diversity. I know that doing the level 4, there's many people aren't going to do that. They're not going to do it at all. So I thought, okay, I'll actually write something that fits the bill, that does what it needs to do. I know that trainers probably haven't got time, that educationally they think they wouldn't be able to do it. So I write something. How much interest? Not a lot, largely because people say I don't need it. And you think, gosh, like you said, CPD wise, I wrote that, and Graham knows, I wrote that so that people could actually have that CPD without having to do long, lengthy essays and those kind of things. And how sad that it's just about tick box.
Is it partly commercial concern over and short-term view over sort of long-term view, and long-term commercial savviness at the end of the day? Because I think in a lot of industries that I've come from, where CPD has been relatively important, and you see people cutting corners all the time and just trying to do the bare minimum and all of that sort of thing, it's because actually, if we're going to be fair and turn it the other way around, quite often people are overloaded. So where you've got people in work where they're overloaded in terms of the amount of responsibilities and roles and whatever it is that they've got to do during the day and whatever, and they've got to do the CPD as well and whatever, they're going to navigate towards doing the bare minimum, as opposed to if they're given an opportunity in their working day to do something above and beyond that.
Yeah, great. Just picking up there, which ties in nice what Marianne said. The other thing as well, and I think the awarding bodies have got a lot to answer for. When I got into training many, many years ago, there was very little in the way of online courses. And then when COVID struck and the awarding bodies were getting no money, all these courses they said would never be online appeared online. I used to teach things. I had clients where I do a lot of courses for them, such as screening vetting, key holding, food safety and things like that. They all moved online. Now, again, that's fine, but then the awarding bodies are doing it purely from a commercial point of view, for money. Even the SIA course, this part of it went online. And for me, if you're teaching security, something as critical as safety of people at venues and things like that, you can't do that on a Zoom call because you can't gauge what they're doing. Now, I got offered a lot of work doing that, and I said, under no circumstances will I do security training over a Zoom call, because again, all they do, and we've all done it ourselves. We go and make a brew, we go to the toilet, and some of the caliber that I'm coming across, that's exactly what they'll do, and they'll miss stuff. They won't admit they've done this, but when the results are poor because they've missed so much, they'll say, "Oh, it's the tutor." They won't say it's themselves. And also as well, heaven forbid anything happens, very much like the MEN, they'll say, "Well, let's look at the training you had." Well, it was online, Zoom training. And when they look into it, I'm quite strict on timekeeping as a good example. Yeah. And I've lost clients because I've removed them, because in a lot of courses, you have guided learning hours and contact hours. And with the security, it's contact. You have to be in the classroom. Has to be. No ifs, buts. And when learners are coming in late and say, "Look, you're not going to make the hours." Well, I'll stay late. Yeah, but the building closes. And also, you're asking me to stay late, which I'm not. I already get here an hour early to set up the classroom. Yeah, you're asking me now to put an extra hour because you can't get here on time. But also look at another point of view. If you can't get in my classroom for 9 a.m., how are you going to get on shift at 6 in the morning or 7? Now, what you've got to imagine is when you're dealing with the unemployed, they're a cash cow. Every person goes through a course, he's got a value on it. When I was removing people, because obviously it's my name on the certificate, when they go for an interview, that carries across, well, who did your training? If this person's lazy and not doing the job and not know the answers, it bounces on me. So I see myself as a gatekeeper. So it's about maintaining standards. And
this is where a lot of the problem comes, though, isn't it? I think your post this morning, Graham, I think it was this morning, kind of says about this. I know that I went for a job years and years and years ago, and they said, "Gosh, your CV's very long, isn't it?" And I went, "Yeah, I've got integrity." And I was literally grilled about it. And I said, "I'll tell you every one of those jobs while I left." And I said a lot of them were because I was told to lie, and I won't do that. And the issue you then got is, like you say, it's like I've had to sort of weigh this up about the fact whether I'll start doing e-learning for the AET. And whilst I don't want to, if I do, it will be video. So it will be the next best thing to being taught by me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I know if it's not me they get that from, they'll go somewhere else they'll go somewhere else and get it. And as you say, it's really, really difficult because, I've looked with another colleague of offering these funded courses. And what makes me really sad is that not all, because I'm sure it's not all, but I don't necessarily think the quality is necessarily great of those. It's just those businesses have got people that can get all of the sort out all the funding and that sort of thing, which a smaller company won't. And yet how wonderful it would be for smaller companies to get that work, because it really would make the difference. I'm not going to lie. There's times I don't get work, not because I'm not good, and probably the same as you, Mark, not because I'm not any good, but because people go straight on the internet and then they go and book whatever's at the top.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing as well, Marianne, it's not just being at the top. It's about who will allow them to be slack on the course.
Exactly.
So I'll give you an example. Okay, I was with a very large company, and I've recently changed my terms and conditions. Okay, because of it, and I turned them away because I haven't done the distance learning. I said, "Oh well, I can give it after the event. I can bring it in tomorrow." I said, "Look, I have to upload this, or I have to visually see it. I'm not lying." So I put it in my terms now. If you've not got your distance learning and your prerequisites, the company still gets charged, yeah, and you won't be put through the course. You know, they have plenty of time to do the distance learning and turn up with ID and photos and this, that, and the other, but sometimes they just want a free ride. They just think it's just a case of turn up on the register and get the certificate.
You know, what that does show is, because you've got your own centre, the same as I've got mine, that's where the difference is. People don't realise. Many people say to me, "You're not working again." And I said, "Well, I'm doing all the behind the scenes stuff." If you do have your own centre, there's a lot of hoops you've got to jump through when you've got to be IQA'd and all this kind of stuff. And what it absolutely shows is that when people, I think, and I might be completely wrong here, there's many people that say they're trainers. Every man and a dog says they offer a course now. We only have to look on the internet to see. And you're like, but you don't have your own centre. And if you did, I'm pretty sure that you probably wouldn't choose to be one if you had to do all that stuff. And it would be a lot easier, you know as well as I do, if you didn't have to do all of that stuff. It would be a lot easier. I still offer people, if they want to do the AET course, they can still do it.
Yeah.
And not, but it won't be a qualification, but they will still get that same teaching from me. They just won't do the qualification. But you think, how many people then, what are they not actually doing correctly? Like you said, you turn people away. I've had people say to me, "Oh, but you know that I know my stuff." And I go, "Yeah, if you know your stuff, then show me. You know, you've got to do these assignments in this way. It's not because I'm being difficult. I'll support you. I'll do whatever I can if you've got a disability or if there's things you're struggling with, but I cannot do it for you."
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Marianne. And I think what it is, because we've got a centre and we've got, as you said before, we want to maintain our credibility, etc. A lot of people don't care. They just want the revenue, no matter what the cost is.
Totally.
I mean, to give you an example, you know, you like yourself, you know, it's been arranged 3 times with this company's client, and they always come to me when it's lastminute.com. They've got the main supplier, but they've got an odd person needs doing, and I'll do it because something in the bank account is better than nothing. So I'll make this guy, he's done everything through distance learning. All I've got to do is sit with him while he does his exams, and I bring an invigilator, which just happens to be my wife. So I'll do the final bits of paperwork with him, get his English done with him, and this, that, and the other, run through all his paperwork, and then he's just got to sit 2 exams. But then I've got to drag my wife out. But again, if it were from a business, I'd have to pay an invigilator. A lot of people don't appreciate the fact the hidden costs that I'll bring another person in.
It's the same when I'll say to a company, right, it's this amount, you know, and then I actually have to then say to them, this much of it isn't even mine. That's the textbook you get. It's the IQA I've got to pay for. It's the registration fee. So before I'm even doing anything, I'm at 200 quid. You know, I started adding that the other day and I thought, gosh, that seems a lot. And I thought, actually, because when I first met Graham, when we went through all of this, he said, "Marianne, you can't joke around with this now. You can't be doing favours for people, because actually, you know, particularly when I get to the point I have to pay someone else to do the marking. If I'm doing it myself, then it's not so much of a big deal. But when I'm actually having to pay someone else to do it, so when I charge nearly 600 for a course, people go, oh, and I think, hang on a minute, there's coaching courses that are way more than that. And actually, you're getting 3 days of me teaching you for a qualification, of which, you know, a third of that isn't even mine. That's not even mine. What do people think? But because there are companies, as you say, that will do it. And I just wish that people would then see. I've met so many people that do e-learning, doing the AET, that then say, oh, I wish I'd gone with you, or if only I'd known. But I did. Part of that, I think, to blame is companies that book people onto courses that don't ask them what their learning preference is, because many of them never would have chosen to do e-learning. They never would have chosen.
Yeah. I'd love to know from Mark what Mark thinks about what you see on social media as well, in terms of the fact that we seem to place very different values on different things these days, and a lot of that seems to be people aren't willing to kind of look out at what other people put in when they're weighing up value. A lot of people will say, well, I'm worth this, I mean, it's obvious that I'm worth this, but they won't consider that someone else is worth something as well. And you look out, and if you look across LinkedIn, hi LinkedIn, if you look across LinkedIn, for example, you'll probably see someone charging £1,500 for doing a day's course on standing on your head and praying for rain, and people will pay it, and yet people won't necessarily pay for something that has a lot of structure to it, a lot of quality to it, a lot of a lot of credibility to it.
Yeah, totally. That's accredited. It seems harder to sell those, and because you do them, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is all the facts you got to look into it. I look at the bigger picture. So I'll give you an example. Quite recently, fingers crossed, I've just completed my NEBOSH. So when I did my NEBOSH, did a bit of research, and I could have got the course considerably cheaper than what I paid for. However, I decided to go to a university. Yeah, so I went to UCLan. Okay, none of it was online except the exam. Other than that, I went and was a teacher for 2 weeks, week on, week off, week on, because I learned better in the classroom.
Yeah, most people do.
Yeah, and so also as well, you got the other aspects of it where you got the social interaction as well, and meeting other people. You can, you do your group exercises. You can't do that on the internet. You can't do that over there. You can't do group exercises. You can't have group discussions. So you miss so many things. It's more difficult for a tutor, but the point being is the fact that while some qualifications, some people will look at it. I look at it with regards to, right, what logo is on that certificate? So when I show somebody, is it Joe Blogg's training, NEBOSH, or is it University of Central Lancashire I've got? The credibility behind the actual certificate. Some jobs don't carry in a weight. Others do. And I
think this is a lot of where the problem is, that people, I mean, Graham and I have many a conversation. Who do we blame for this sort of sheep culture? Is it the people offering, or is it the people having? And I think it is now that people want things cheap and quick, fast, but then they moan afterwards that they didn't learn anything. And I think, well,
lastminute.com doesn't help as well. They might start to get phone calls and say, oh, I need a course next week. I'm not available. Oh, right, okay. And they'll go elsewhere. They don't plan. They don't plan their training. They wait for an audit. I've got an audit coming on. I need this qualification. Oh.
So it's reactive a lot of the time rather than proactive.
Yeah.
Well, so reactive. I mean, my IQA, I worked with him, and that when he first went with me, because I'd had another IQA that wasn't great. And so the first year, all of my work was IQA. Second year, we went on to, because a lot of people don't know how this works. And so when I speak to people on a one-to-one about who I am, that's when I'll say to them, that first year I was checked. The second year he checked 3 courses of every cohort. Next year, half. And now I'm on a quarter, because that's the lowest that it can be. And I said, what you can get from that is that, I'm a very low risk, and that pretty much when I say that you've passed, you have. And it's only when you have those conversations with people, they go, oh, I didn't realise.
No, they don't.
Many people don't actually have that conversation with the person that's offering them. I'm doing some training for a company tomorrow, recruitment company, and I had a Zoom conversation with them beforehand. They sought me out. They watched me on social media. Various people have said, I chose you because I've been following you, and I saw what you do, and you seem, I don't say seemed because nobody knows 100%, credible because you know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But I think also as well, from a marketing point of view, Marianne, I think where before websites were critical, I think they're not as critical now. I think people look more where you are on social media. Yeah, nobody goes on a website now and looks. They go on social media, and then they go on Facebook, LinkedIn, and everything else. And for one reason or another, I'm not a fan of social media. The only social media I'm on is LinkedIn. Don't do Facebook, don't do Instagram, don't do Snapchat. Because I'm a private person in that way. I just feel, it is, but unfortunately, it's a generational thing, I think, also as well. Younger generation live their life on a phone. I'd be quite happy if I went back to an old Nokia.
It's a really difficult one because, again, we talked about this a lot in the last few weeks, is that you can get to be seen in very many ways on social media if you wanted to. Again, if you're going to play that game, then you can be seen. But if you don't want to play that game, which I'm pretty sure, Mark, you wouldn't, I don't, Graham wouldn't, it's just very, very difficult financially then when playing that longer game means that it hits you harder. It does hit you harder.
Agreed.
But, I won't sell my soul, you won't sell yours. And it's just frustrating.
I don't know. I don't mind being seen. I just like to be seen in the right way.
No, that's what I was saying. But you'll be seen. But largely at the moment, you can only be seen if you often play shady games, or you were known, as we've said before, on LinkedIn before LinkedIn was like it is now.
It's quite interesting. I mean, both Marianne and I went to an event recently, which there were quite a number of sort of social media gurus at it, and it was quite interesting, some of the stuff that came out of that. Because basically what is being said is that actually, if you want to be seen exponentially by a lot of people on social media, what you have to do is actually put away any assumption as to what you want to teach people. Now, for anyone in training who want to naturally educate, you might as well forget it, because that's not going to get you seen on social media. What you need to do on social media is to replicate what people are wanting on social media. And if that's that they want to see, you taking the dog for a walk, and climbing up a ladder and falling off, or whatever, then that's what you've got to replicate, regardless of, maybe you can swing it back round to try and get segue in your message or whatever, but that's what you've got to do if you want the figures to go up. Now, if you want to do something different, right, if you actually want to make a different noise on social media and actually educate people and take people on the journey and take them somewhere where they're not already, and cut through the rubbish, then you have to accept that it's going to take you longer, it's going to be harder, and you're going to be fighting all the way. And
Graham, a valid point you made there. I do take on board. I have thought about this for a while, but the problem you've got with social media is the amount of keyboard warriors and vultures and horrible people and trolls on there. You put anything on there that's different, that they disagree with, they are all over you. I've seen it so many times where girls have been successful, and I'll just give a round of applause, say, well done you. But then, just because someone's driving a Ferrari or they're in a Spa or whatever, and this, and the women will get comments about showing a bit of cleavage. They get a comment about something else. I'm like, at the end of the day, it's like, that's not who I am, and that's what I do. So I'm playing the longer game and say, look, you want professionalism? Here we go. What car I drive, or if I've got a dog or not got a dog, okay, I can go down with that to a degree. But again, it's personal.
There's too much, though, about, again, we've talked about this. I think showing some of your personality, if you see what I mean, is fair enough, but not to the point, like you said, Graham and I do LinkedIn training, and actually where ours is different is that what we've seen is that so many people are taught how to do social media training someone else's way, not their way. Not their way. And I've worked with Graham for a long time, and he's taken a long time, bless him, to get to know me and to understand that doesn't come overnight either. That comes from many conversations, it comes from many rows, it comes from but him taking the time to get to know me because I was not going to have anybody helping me with that. I absolutely was not going to. And actually now, you know, I've learned a lot from it, that, you know, to be able to write mine and write other people's as well, you know, but we all know about, you know, how I was called out on social media.
Ultimately, it's really, really simple, right? As far as I'm concerned, the world is, and I'll say this till I'm blue in the teeth and I'm 6 foot under, right? The world is full of lovely, messy human beings, and ultimately we just have to accept the lovely messiness of human existence, right? And ultimately what we want on social media, I think a lot of us, and actually today's poll was a great exception, you know, great example of that. Look how many people voted. Yet actually we do want something different from all of this that's out there at the moment, right? What we want is we want to be able to do stuff our way, right, and cut across all of this noise that's out there, all of these people that just post this just for the sake of it, and, you know, take the algorithm and run with it just because the algorithm says this is the day for cats and dogs or whatever. But ultimately we need to do it together, because if we don't do it together and we don't start pulling together and going, actually, I want professionalism and I want this, and we have to act with dignity and with, yes, be creative, yes, be slightly entertaining at the same time, because none of us want to turn on a computer and be bored to death or whatever. But we want to see somebody respectfully, somebody's intelligence and their wisdom and whatever in front of us, and the only way to do it is to do it our way, not the way that other people tell us, because that's important. And that's, as you say, when we wrote the course, what we teach people to do is we teach them to think for themselves rather than think what they've been told. Because
just 1 second, guys, someone's at the door. 1 second, apologies.
Oh, quick, go to the door. Mark's gone to the door to open it and get his LinkedIn training course from A Better Way of Life. There he is, going to the door. Do you notice? A, he disappeared like a ghost, and B, the front door isn't actually opening, which just kind of gives the game away, really. But isn't it? You know, that's ultimately what we need to do. Is I think there is strength in numbers, though, and I think the numbers are growing of people that are getting sick to death of it. You know, and as much as there's a growing amount of people that just love the game, I think there's a growing amount of people that don't love the game.
Yeah, when you have conversations, and that's where I think people need to also be responsible for not, you know, I know, to me, I think you told me about these pods and stuff that people, to me, that's cheating. And yes, it'd be great, it would pay my bills more, because I know that when people do have me train them, they're more than happy. So arguably, some would say I'm a bit of a fool for not doing it, because it's just like catapulting yourself to be seen more. But again, it doesn't seem fair, because there are other people who aren't being seen. And I just think if people started, even on one of my posts I put out that went like almost viral for me, that it did, when I was saying, people tag people, recommend people. You know, when I have conversations, just do that. When you know somebody, I know that if someone needed what you do, Mark, you would say, I know that you would say with me. But there's so many people, when I say to them, do you go on LinkedIn? Like, do you have a look around? Do you? And they say, no, I just post. And I said, but that's like having a restaurant, expecting people to come to your restaurant and then not dining out at all.
Yeah. Mark.
Yes.
Marianne, thank you so much for joining us today. We're out of time, and we have to stop there, because otherwise we can't stream this on all networks, etc. That's the way it goes. But thank you so much for, again, an insightful conversation today. Remember, folks, you don't have to do what everybody else says. Also, when it comes to training, think about quality over just ticking a box. That's so important.
Ask questions.
Yeah, ask questions, and you know, ultimately use a bit of intelligence out there, folks. You know, because not everything's as it seems sometimes. We'll be back.
The website's just a veneer.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be back same time, same place next week with another insightful conversation. If you've enjoyed this, please do share. Until then, bye for now.